Ah, Okay, I'm done. Oh my goodness. Oh, you can see my tree. So festive. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. It is just me, TinieTashaa, or you can call me Tasha like everyone else does. We are back, it is Serial Killer Sunday. Last week was my first ever Serial Killer Sunday. It went down a storm, we loved it. So I'm going to continue doing a Serial Killer Sunday series. It might not be every Sunday, but I'm going to try and do it as many times as I can because you guys do seem to really enjoy it, which is great because I enjoy doing them as well. So last week's Serial Killer Sunday we spoke about the alphabet murders, which was an unsolved case. If you haven't watched that one yet, I will leave the link. If you haven't seen it, please go and watch that, but not right now. Watch it after, don't leave. So this week's Serial Killer Sunday, I decided to come back to the UK because we were in America last week and it is a solved case this time, and it is a really old one as well. And I love really old serial killers, like I find them fascinating. This is actually one of the first UK female serial killers. One of the first, she's not the first, but she is Marianne Cotton, and I'm very excited to talk about her because she was seriously fucked up. So, as always, just want to remind you guys there is a disclaimer on this video. So, warning. Some viewers may find the following content highly disturbing and controversial. Viewers' discretion is advised. Okay, so I'm gonna get started now. Also, I haven't really planned what look I'm gonna be doing today, so this could go really wrong. Okay, so I'm going to take you guys back to the very, very beginning of this story. So in 1832, so a very, 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 very long time ago. And we are in October of 1832, where Marianne Robson was born. She was born at Low Moorsley in Sunderland, so up north, northern way. I'm just saying that because I'm a southerner, so that's why I say up north, but you know. So her father was a miner, he was called Michael Robson, and her mother, Margaret. So Mary also had a sister, and she was born in 1834, but she passed away a few months after she was born. And she also had a brother called Robert, who was born in 1835. So they were all very close in age. When Marianne was 8, her parents decided to move from Sunderland to County Durham, specifically in a village called Merton. So one of Marianne's school teachers has described Marianne as a girl of innocent disposition with average intelligence. How rude is that? Your teacher's saying you have average intelligence. I mean, I have average intelligence. I'm not a smart cookie, but I wouldn't want someone to tell me that. Do you know what I mean? Bit rude. And also that she was very distinguished despite her very clean and tidy appearance. So don't really know whether that's a backhanded compliment or not, but I was a bit pissed off about that first comment. So Marianne's father was a coal miner for a job, which is a super, super dangerous job, but very common in the 1800s for most men to be coal miners. So just after they moved down to County Durham, Mary's father fell 150 feet to his death down a mine shaft in the Merton colliery in February 1842. So she was still really young when she tragically lost her father. It's just awful, especially to die that way. He was just trying to live in for his family, do you know what I mean? The worst part is her father's body was delivered to them, to her house, to her mother, in a sack, bearing the stamp on the sack saying property of South Hetton Coal Company. Like, could you imagine getting the body of your husband or for your father in a sack, like just delivered to you, like, there you go, sorry about your loss. Her mother then briefly, after losing her husband, she then remarried, which, you know, don't really know how I feel about that so quickly, hun. Moving on like that, not my place to really judge, is it really? But yeah, she moved on, pretty toot sweet. And she remarried a man called George Scott, and he was also a coal miner. You'd think you'd learn from losing your first husband, but you know, whatever. Can't help who you fall in love with, can you? But being a miner was quite a sexy job back then, like being put at risk, do you know what I mean? Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I'm just talking shit. So at the age of 16, Marianne then decided to leave home, and she got her first job as a nurse that like looked after children at a wealthy man's home called Edward Potter. And Edward Potter was a manager at the Merton Colliery, so the owner of where her father worked. She looked after his children and was a nurse at his family home. So she ended up staying with the family as their nurse for a while, and she just stayed with them really until the children were old enough to go to boarding school, and then they left and she was no longer needed. So she then decided to study and become a dressmaker. Now, I just want to say, because this is the 1800s, I have struggled to get some pictures of everyone involved in this story. It's quite difficult to get hold of pictures from the 1800s, as you can probably imagine. So, apologies on the lack of images going forward from now. So, in 1852, at the age of 20, Marianne got married. Right, this, I just would like to just quickly say, it goes downhill from here. She marries a man called William Mowbray, and they get married in Newcastle upon Tyne, and then they end up moving slightly more southwest of England. So William and Anne then decided to move back to northeast England with the birth of their child, Margaret Jane, who was born in 1856. William then worked as a fireman on a boat, and then as a coal miner again. Then Mary Ann fell pregnant again with Isabella, and she was born in 1858. And then her older sister that I mentioned before, Margaret Jane, she died in 1860. And another daughter, also named Margaret Jane, was born. So it was like, you don't lose a kid and then name your next one the same name. Do you know what I mean? Don't work like that. Then she fell pregnant again, and she had a son this time, who was called John Robert William, but he passed away of gastric fever a year later. It's just so sad. So when you think about it, this woman just wanted to start a big family and like have a big family, and they're dropping like flies, and you just, at this point in the story, you do feel so sorry for her, because it's like she has the world's worst luck. So then when you think she couldn't have it any worse, her husband William passes away. And he passes away of some form of intestine disorder in January 1865. So literally it is one after the other. So the lives of William and of their children were all insured. She made sure she insured everyone's lives. And on the loss of her husband William, she managed to get a payout of £35 on their life insurance, which is equivalent to about £3,371 in today's sort of money, which would work out to be half a year's wages for someone who was on good money back then. So that was like mint money. And it's as if she, our good old friend Marianne, was like, this is working out for me, this whole losing family member lark. I could get used to this payout. And it's as if then something twigged in her little brain from that moment that actually this is all going very well for her. So just after the death of her husband, Marianne decided she needed a bit of a fresh start. She wanted to get out, which get. She then moved to Seaham Harbour, County Durham, where she ends up striking up a relationship with a man called Joseph Natras. But during this time when she moved, she actually lost her 3.5-year-old daughter, Margaret Jane, so the second Margaret Jane. You know, the one, not the oldest one who died, but the one she then named after. She got Margaret Jane who died, Isabella, Margaret Jane, and Joseph. That Margaret Jane died. And she died of typhus fever, so she ended up leaving her with only one child, which was Isabella. So with this shocking news, she then decided to return to Sunderland, which I can understand, you know. She's lost so many people. She tried to get away from all that heartache for a little bit, and then she just gets hits again. Poor woman can't catch a break. And she ended up taking up a job in an infirmary. Right, this is the name of the infirmary, right? I'm gonna have to read this because it's so long. House of Recovery for the Cure of Contagious Fever dispensary and human society. Imagine having that outside a shop. Like, think of a shorter name for an infirmary, do you know what I mean? That's not why I mentioned it. So she was ended up working there. But her surviving child, Isabella, because of the hours her mum was working at the infirmary, she couldn't look after Isabella, so she sent Isabella to her mum's house to live. Basically like, I can't work when you're here, you're in the way. Go to your nan's house. One of her patients at the infirmary was called George Ward, and this man was very, very ill, and she saw this as an opportunity, our friend Mary. She was like, oh, this man's on his last legs. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna marry him. So they got married. He was like, sure, I'll marry her. And they got married in August of 1865. Now he had his wife, who was a nurse, looking after him. Like, you wouldn't expect anything less. You want your wife to look after you if she's a nurse and bring you back to life. You'd suspect anyway. And our good old friend Mary tried everything she could for her husband George. He ended up dying. Poor George. He was paralysed and he had internal intestinal issues again, which was a very similar thing that her first husband died from. The recorded death on his death certificate was cholera and typhoid. So later on, the attending doctor was actually very surprised at how quickly George's health deteriorated. He knew he was very, very ill, but he really wasn't expecting him to deteriorate that quickly. Pretty surprised that he ended up dying so quickly, especially after he just got married. Interesting. Suspicious? Once again, Marianne decided, you know, he'd passed away, she was going to collect his insurance money because, you know, thank God for insurance, right? So swiftly after she lost George, this gal can't be lonely, you know, she ended up getting with another guy. So this guy, James Robinson, right? He recently also lost his wife and he built ships for a living. And because he lost his wife and he sort of needed someone essentially to take care of business at home while he was working, and he ended up getting a housekeeper. Just guess who this housekeeper ended up being. Yes, it was our mate, Mary. She said, don't you worry, I will do all the jobs around the house for you. I will be your housekeeper and I will mend your broken heart. No, she didn't say that, but you know what I mean. And this was in 1866. So James actually had a son as well. Shortly after employing Mary, his baby son, John, passed away and he died of gastric fever. And you know, this was just shocking news because the baby was super healthy, he had absolutely nothing wrong with him, and all of a sudden he's passed away. So not only has this man lost his wife, but he's now lost his baby as well. He then ended up turning to Marianne for support. You know, she was fantastic through all this, he thought she was amazing, and ended up turning to her for support, emotional support through all this. And by the sounds of it, some physical support, if you know what I'm saying, because she fell pregnant. Oh dear. Just shortly after Marianne fell pregnant, Marianne's mother was not too far away and she actually ended up passing away. She became ill with hepatitis, so Marianne immediately went to her mum. As Marianne was on her way to see her mum, she was actually getting better. The doctors were seeing some improvement in her health and it actually wasn't looking as scary as Marianne initially thought. So once Marianne had arrived to comfort and help her mum, while Marianne was looking after her, her mother started complaining of stomach pains and all of a sudden she died at aged 54 in 1867. But that was 9 days after Marianne had turned up. Suspicious. So because Marianne's first daughter, Isabella, was actually living with her nan, who's now passed away, Marianne decided to bring her home with them to live with her new husband, James Robinson. So soon after she moved back in with her mum, Isabella started then complaining of stomach cramps and stomach pains and ended up dying in May of 1867. Why is this woman just absolutely, you know, surrounded by death? Poor woman. Are we still thinking that? I mean, Marianne received life insurance for Isabel's death. Of course she did. Of course she did. Of course she's got life insurance on her daughter. She doesn't miss a beat, this woman. The insurance payout was £5, 10 shillings and a sixpence. I say it like that because it's a lot of money. So then after all this James man was like, you know what, I'm gonna marry her because she's just gone through hell and back, this woman. You know, she's lost so many people, I've lost so many people, and she's such an amazing support. I'm gonna marry her. Mate, abort mission, man. This is a bad idea. This is not going to end well for you. Their first child together, James and Marianne, was Margaret Isabella. The names are intense, they're all very similar. Margaret Isabella was born in November, but she became really ill and died in the following February of 1868. Why does everyone keep dropping like flies around Marianne? Their second child was then born, George, and he was born in June of 89. So literally she was getting pregnant, killing them off, getting pregnant, killing them off. Meanwhile, James Robertson became very suspicious of his wife's action because she just constantly kept nagging him about getting life insurance. She was like, you know, after everything that's happened to us, I really think you should get life insurance because, you know, what if something happens? You just can't be sure, you know, we seem to be cursed. He then discovered that she was racking up some debts behind his back. She had a run up of £60 worth of debt, which is the equivalent now to about £6,800. Behind his back, she had then stolen £50 worth from the bank. So, you know, she got a loan out and just was not giving it back. And now he could tell why she wanted some insurance benefit from him. Then, shortly after he discovered the debts, he then found out that Marianne was getting the children to pawn some of their household valuables behind his back. And she was like, well shit, I've been caught. And he then decided to kick her out because he's like, fuck this shit, I don't want you involved in my life anymore, and kicked her out. So then after he kicked her out, Marianne was desperate. You know, she was living on the streets. She now had no home, she had no security. It was a mess. She'd really fucked up this time. She then ended up becoming friends with this lady called Margaret Cotton, and Margaret Cotton, introduced Marianne to her brother, who was called Frederick Cotton. And just guess what he did as a living, guys, just guess. He was a coal miner. I feel like everyone was a coal miner. And he was recently widowed and living in Warbottle in Northumberland, and he had lost 2 of his 4 children. You know, Margaret took the remaining children under her wing and became a real support to them. The kids were called Frederick Jr. and Charles. But then one of his children, Charles, died of a stomach ailment, leaving Marianne to console the grieving Frederick. And then very much after that, Marianne was pregnant again. Surprise, surprise. Honestly, how is her body still functioning after having so many kids? Especially in the 1800s, you would have thought she would have died, wouldn't you, by now? So then Frederick Cotton and Mary ended up getting married. Again, she got married in September of 1870, back in Newcastle upon Tyne. Surprised I don't know her by name by now. Then her son Robert was born in early 1871. So soon after the birth of her son, she then found out that her previous lover, Joseph Nattrass, do you remember him? I mentioned him earlier, was only living 30 miles away from her in County Durham, and he was no longer married. She then decided to rekindle her romance behind her husband's back with Joseph Nattrass, and she managed to persuade her family to move closer in his direction. She's like, oh, I've seen a really nice house, let's move. Completely got nothing to do with the fact that this like hot man that she used to have a thing for lives up the road. So then guys, later that year, 1971, guess what happened? Cotton passed away. He died of gastric fever that same year, 1971. And the insurance claim had been altered so that him and his son's life insurance had been altered, but not by them. So, as you can imagine, swiftly after Frederick Cotton passed away, Marianne Cotton then got in touch with her lover Joseph Nattrass, and he became Marianne's lodger, considering she only lived just up the road. What a surprise! I didn't know you lived here. And then she became a nurse again. Then Frederick Cotton's son, Frederick Jr., passed away in Marianne's care, and then her son with Frederick, Robert, passed away shortly after. It's as if she's just killing them off. Then, not long after that, just when you think, you know, she wants to settle down with the love of her life, this Joseph guy, a few years later, Joseph cops it as well, of gastric fever. And, of course, because it's our gal, just before he died, he managed to rearrange his will in her name. Of course he did. Of course he did. Good old Mary, she knows what she's doing, didn't she? She's a smart cookie. Everything was then left to Marianne, you know, the house, everything. So then, Marianne's sort of downfall came from here on out. So while she was working as a nurse, a priest called Thomas Riley approached her and said that there was someone who was in need of some care and whether she could help being a nurse. She was like, sure. That's my job, I can offer my assistance. So the last surviving son from her relationship with Edward Cotton, Charles, was in the way, and he asked the priest, I need you to get rid of my son because he's really in the way. And this priest was like, sure, I'll get him some work, don't worry, leave it with me. These are the words she said. She said, I won't be troubled long. He'll go like all the rest of the Cottons, is what she said to this priest. And this priest was like, whatever, don't know what's wrong with her, she's weird, whatever. Thinking nothing of it, because he doesn't know her. So after the priest then got Charles some work, he then became very, very ill, and Marianne, being a nurse, ended up looking after her son, looking over him, trying to make him better. And this priest, Thomas Riley, was adamant that the kid would pull through. He was going to be fine. So then, when Marianne gave him the news her son had passed away, he then decided to tell the police, you know, before you end up writing that death certificate, I'd hold off if I were you, because I don't trust this Marianne, she's suspicious. And so, after Charles's death, the first visit that Marianne made after her son's death was to the insurance office. She didn't even, you know, go and see his body or anything. She just went straight to collect that insurance money. But then she discovered that no money had been paid out because they were waiting for the death certificate. So she was then like, oh shit, this isn't good. And so then once the investigation was done on Charles's body, the jury and all the investigators decided that he had died of natural causes and that there was nothing that could have been done to help him. But in this time, the newspapers had latched onto this whole story about, you know, Marianne and all of these deaths that have surrounded her and her family, and they then ended up doing a bit of digging on Marianne and who she was, and they ended up finding out that she had 3 husbands that had passed away, a lover, a mother, and all 11 children had passed away of the same thing. And they were like, hold up, weird. So police and investigators were basically like, either this woman is extremely unlucky and has lost, you know, all these people in her family, or she's got something to do with it. Speculation started to go around that she was involved in all of these cases, and a scientific investigation thoroughly went in trying to find some info now on what was going on. And a doctor called William Byers Kilburn did an autopsy on Charles's body and had discovered that Charles's body contained arsenic. As soon as they found this out, that was it then. Marianne Cotton was then arrested and she was charged with the murder of her son Charles. And obviously there was a delay with Marianne's trial because guess what? January 1987, this woman gave birth to her 13th child. I just can't. This woman is still having kids and she's been charged for murder of one of her kids. This woman is just something else, man. She then called this child, are you ready for this? Margaret Edith Quick Manning Cotton. Like, really? You're trying to go out with a bang because it's your 13th child? I don't know. But it's just not needed, is it? So Marianne's trial then began as soon as she gave birth to, I'm just going to call her Margaret, I'm not saying that long name all over again. And it only took 90 minutes for the jury to deliberate before giving Marianne her guilty verdict. That mama is going to prison, baby. Bye, can't kill any more children. Okay, so, sorry, I had to go and do my lip because I was getting stressed out. So, our friend Marianne Cotton ended up getting hung at Durham County Jail on the 24th of March, 1873. And it was quite gruesome, actually, because she didn't die from the actual rope snapping her neck, and that usually is what kills you straight away. But with Marianne Cotton, she died of strangulation because the rope was actually too short. It's as if they did it on purpose, if you ask me, to sort of give her a really horrific death for all the people that she'd killed. I mean, I don't know if this lip matches. Maybe I should have gone pink. Should I go pink? Let me go pink. Let me see what it looks like pink. I mean, the pink is a lot, but I'm living for it. Okay, that's better. So out of all 13 of Marianne's children, only 2 survived, which was Margaret Edith with the extremely long name and her son George from her marriage to James Robinson. All the rest of her children had died. She'd killed all 3 of her husbands, her mother and a lover. That's a lot of people for one woman to get away with killing. So that's our good pal, Marianne Cotton. I got only so high teeth. So I personally think the moral of this story is never trust your spouse, because they could actually be killing you for insurance money. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this. It was actually really difficult this time to talk and do my makeup at the same time. I really struggled with this one, I don't know why. I hope you like the look. It's a vibe. I hope you like the Christmassiness in my background. I've got a candle, I don't know if you saw. It smells of gingerbread in here, it's wonderful. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Again, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think of Marianne Cotton. And if you're not already subscribed, please do it now. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.